What was going on in your life at the time when you got your cancer diagnosis? Back to that moment.
So when I got diagnosed with cancer, I'd had my first son, who was a year old. I was working a busy corporate life with a great company, traveling around the world, doing innovation in health. And I was doing a lot of kickboxing and a lot of jiu-jitsu, a lot of MMA. That was my sport. And then I just had a persistent back pain. So still in good shape, still sort of feeling all right, just this pain become more and more of a problem.
So you just made an assumption it was from your training and that it was fine and you didn't have time to face this thing.
Yeah, I didn't feel sick. I was in great shape. All I had was a very specific, sharp and worsening lower back pain.
And when you say you were in great shape, what did that look like back then? You mean like physically?
Yeah, physically I was basically training 7 to 10 hours a week in MMA, so jiu-jitsu, strength conditioning, kickboxing. So I think physically hard workload. And then I was obviously, a lot of corporate activity as well and a lot of business stress. But that's just life to me.
And did you ever even think about inflammation at that point in your life? Was that on your radar?
Yeah, definitely. Because you do MMA or jiu-jitsu, you're getting a lot of pain issues because of trauma. So you get punched and you get kicked and you punch and you kick. So you're always having a couple of injuries, whether it's just bruising and swelling from getting hit or whether it's something long-term from the joints and the connective tissues of repetitive striking or grappling. So ibuprofen was used like 3-4 times a day. I'd be taking ibuprofen for long periods, and it's very common in my sport.
And you never questioned it at that point in your life, that the amount that you were taking?
Well, I knew you're not supposed to take ibuprofen for medium long-term use. So everyone knows it, but look, this stuff I can just buy over the counter anywhere, so it's fine. I'm just taking it because I need to sleep and my neck is sore. Or I need to sleep because now I've got a sore shoulder.
Okay, so then you went and you got this diagnosis. Talk me through that moment.
So I'm in an MRI machine. I've been in there many times over the life of rugby league and even surfing. Surprisingly, you can get some injuries. And I'd had problems with different injuries, knees, my neck, all that. So I'm in an MRI, normally used to it, the big loud bangs, just sitting there strapped in. And then halfway through the MRI, he slid me out of the machine and said, I just need to inject a trace in you here, nothing to worry about. And he injected something in, and I remember then thinking, that's never happened before. So as he slid me back in, this thought come into my head so clear, and it said, you've got cancer. And I'm sitting in there with all of this noise and the magnetic noise of an MRI machine just going, okay, so what's next? What do I need to do? It's one of the freakiest thoughts I've ever had, and it's one of these moments that make you question how the world works, because how did I just diagnose myself? I've got a back pain, a herniated disc. I've been here many times. Then when he slid me out of the machine, he said, okay, so I'm going to send the results to your doctor and you're going to need to go and see them. And I said, look, he's in Japan. That's where Harry was. And he said, no, your local doctor, I'm going to need you to go there now. Straight away. I'm like, oh my God, can you tell me what it is? He said, sorry, I can't, but I'll send it all now. So I jumped in the car, drove 20 minutes to my GP. As soon as I got there, said my name, and they said, oh, he's waiting for you in a room over here. That never happens. I'm usually sat there reading old newspapers and on my phone. I walk in, he just goes, okay, look, they found a golf ball-sized tumour on the base of your spine. I've just got to go through a series of tests. And then I just went a bit numb, but I was like, hang on, I don't feel sick. I've just got this back pain. So we went through and tested everything, and he went through all these preliminary tests because it was an odd tumour. And then he just said, look, we've got to get you into the hospital right now, and we want to check this out because of where it is on the base of your spine. So 50 minutes later, I'm in the hospital in a cancer ward, calling Harry. I hadn't spoken to anyone. I'm still a bit numb. Went home, grabbed a bag, went to the hospital, went in a cancer ward, listening to people around me, obviously sick. still feeling fine. 4 hours later, I'd done a personal best on bench press. Like, none of this is making sense. And then Harry calls me back. He's in Japan. He's just rode around Mount Fuji. And it was just a surreal thing. He's like, what's up? And I went, yeah. And I told him what it is. And he said, okay, so where are you? I told him I'm in the cancer ward. And he goes, okay, right. All of this is preliminary. They'll run a bunch of tests. Just to reiterate again, you haven't lost weight. You haven't lost appetite. Your energy's good. And I'm answering yes to all of these. And then he said, okay, so just chances are it's benign. Just do what they say. And then a series of doctors came around the next 12 hours, like even up to midnight and all of this. 3 or 4 of these doctors, and they all kept asking me the same question. So your weight hasn't dropped. You haven't lost energy. So everyone assumed there's just a weird little tumour grow. And then they come and said, look, we want to check out your brain. So we got a scan. I remember that was about 1:30 in the morning. So I haven't talked to my parents. I haven't talked to anyone. Crazy day. I haven't talked to my parents, haven't talked to anyone, just Harry. And he's sort of then texting and I'm trying to update him. So we go for I think it was a functional MRI of the brain or something that night to have a look at. And then I started to get scared because I'm like, oh, if it's in the brain, that's pretty bad. And then probably got an hour's sleep that morning and a doctor came around and then said, look, the brain's clear, everything's clear. It's just this isolated tumour, so we've got to determine what it is. And then I said, look, can we biopsy it? And they said, well, with this type of thing, we don't want to biopsy. And I was going, why? And he said, look, there's different types of tumours. We've got to go through and screen out before we puncture the tumour because sometimes those ones spread by puncturing. I went, oh, okay, so what do you think it is? Well, no, look, we're not, it's too early, but, it could be sarcoma. And then he left and I Googled sarcoma and that was a mistake because that's one of the worst, aggressively spread, and it needed an operation. So then I'm sitting there thinking, I'm about to have a spine operation. So this could automatically, I might never walk again. All these thoughts are competing along with me doing Google searches and then Harry calling and reassuring. And so it took over 2 weeks before they biopsied it. So we went through a series of tests every couple of days. They would come in and do a bone marrow test, they'd do a blood test, they'd do all these things trying to screen out as much as they could before they were ready to puncture the tumour, and that gives a definitive diagnosis.
So what I think is wild with this whole story is that Harry, co-founder of KURK, your good close friend, also had the same cancer at a young age. Isn't that wild? Yeah,
so the fact of Harry, my co-founder, my best friend, my doctor, had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma 3 years before I was diagnosed was one of the puzzles of life I'll never explain. He came into my life at a time when, I just had friendship, we bonded over business, we bonded over health. And then for me to get that same diagnosis that he had gone through was a gift that he was there. And I look back in life and there's a number of things that have happened to me that have been almost, universal flukes, and that was one of them.
So talk to me about how, I think it was the 3rd round of chemotherapy you started writing the business plan, is that right?
Yeah, so after 2 weeks in a hospital, they biopsy it, they come back and say, look, it's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you're going to need 6 months of chemotherapy, and that's all that was said. I think they might have mentioned radiation, but when I heard chemotherapy, everything sort of stopped in my brain, and all I thought about was Breaking Bad, the TV show, because that's the only reference I had. I called up Harry. He didn't have chemo. He just had radiation for his lymphoma because it was on his neck. I needed chemo. So I'm then doing research on chemo. I'm then thinking, oh my God, this is poison. Right? You poison every cell in your body to kill the cancer. But then every cell in your body goes. So you lose your hair, all this sort of stuff. You have no immune system, all of it. It's pretty tragic. So building up to the first round, a poignant moment, I went into the local chemist and give them the prescription of all the drugs that we get through this chemo cycle. And it's a big list. It's a lot of drugs. And you've got sleeping drugs, you've got anti-anxiety, you've got anti-nausea, and then you've got things to offset all those. It's a cocktail. And just as I gave it to the pharmacist, she sort of looked and read it, and they sort of look up, and, you know, you're young, and they're like, oh, okay. And then she gives it to the pharmacist, and something caught my eye, and the pharmacist sort of walked around, and she stopped and looked over to me. It was a girl I went to high school with. And I looked, and she sort of come over and said, sorry to hear. I remember going, well, good to see you again. Like, well, what a weird situation. This is 15 years after I last seen her. And she goes, look, we'll get you right. We'll go and get this done. And so she goes up and then comes down with a massive bag of drugs.
Must have been shocking for you, right, to see all of that.
Everything's still a blur, but at this stage I've told my family, I've told my close friends, I've told my company. Everyone's supportive, but I feel the pity, I feel the fear. So I sort of shut myself down. It's only really me and Harry. You know, my mum and my dad, my brother, like, they're helpful, but I'm like, I want to just deal with this by myself largely. So when I went back home, I laid out all these drugs, read the extensive notes of what I need to do, and it almost took up the coffee table. But I don't care, right? I need help. I'm pro-medicine. I've got my best friend that's a doctor telling me to do this. So I started the protocol, and then the first round of chemo, I sat in a room for 6 to 8 hours, and they just keep bringing other bags of, liquid to go into your veins. And one of them is the scary one. They then, all of the nurses and people that work in these places are just phenomenal human beings. They work with people in very tough times, and they're cheery and they're beautiful, just great human beings. But they would put a mask on and thick gloves and go and get this certain bag, and they'd pull it out, and it was in ice. So I just looked over at this one. They then hook it up to the sort of holder, and then they inject it into your veins, and it was freezing cold. So this just shoots a chill. And logically, I'm like, she's terrified of touching the bag, and that's going straight in. So that's the big dose, so to speak. And after that first round, I felt all right. I went home, and I ate something, and then bang, something just hit. Started hallucinating a little bit, and then I started throwing up, and my brother was with me. And then he's calling Harry. Oh, look, this is what's happening, and describing it. And Harry sort of wrote another script. Harry was at a restaurant and wrote a script for a different anti-nausea drug on the letterhead of the restaurant, and emailed it to my brother. I remember my brother going, Harry, I can't take this to a chemist. And Harry's assuring him, yes, you can. This is fine. And he's going, no, I need a prescription. Harry's like, no, this is fine. So my brother goes out. He comes back with these other anti-nausea that I took, and it soothed the issues I was having. And then that set about this whole thing of why did one drug work and why did one not? And then I was spending my days researching, I don't need sleeping tablets. What else is there? And the first thing we looked at is obviously THC from cannabis. So we know that was widely used in cancer treatments. I'd used it a little bit recreationally at university. So we started incorporating that in and dropping the sleeping tablets. And then I could also drop the anti-nausea and then the appetite stimulators because, I'd feel great, right? We all know that, or most of us know that. So then I started developing this, and then I'm looking at the other drugs and say, what else can I look at? And I was putting up vitamin C, vitamin D3, understanding the D3K2 mix. And then turmeric was the one that just kept occurring. Anti-inflammatory, a really interesting compound. So I had 5 or 6 different types of curcumin, turmeric stuff, and just bringing those into the regime. And so by the 3rd cycle of chemo, I'd gone from 14 drugs on that coffee table down to 4, the essential ones, the ones that Harry's saying, no, we're taking those. But next to them were a lot of plant compounds. And that was just a real clear indicator. That is fascinating to me, and I need to learn more. And so the 6 months of chemo, what was really interesting for me is I was able to keep up my physical training because I got a gym nearby that let me in at 4 a.m. when the gym was just getting cleaned, so I wouldn't catch anything. but I could keep my identity of lifting weights. But more importantly, the business became obvious. I was like, all right, I want to focus on how the plant compounds can offset the synthetics. And that's really the business plan of KURK. And it gave me a bit of purpose because I couldn't work, I couldn't do anything else. So I started researching, started looking, doing it with Harry. And here is a guy with 5 degrees in medicine and science, prescribing GP, a longevity master, and a guy that can explain complex medical things so I could understand. So it was part of a little project I did. And then at the end of chemo, the doctor said, yep, we've gone through chemo, it's all working well, now we've got to do radiation. And I remember saying to him, I thought it was just chemo. He goes, no, you've got to do 20 shots of radiation. So then I'm researching that. The first shot's the next day, and radiation, we understand X-rays and going through the airport, but this targeted radiation was different. And so I started a cycle of that. Now, that was relatively pain-free, but when I signed up for it and went through with the doctors about, I had to sign a disclaimer, and he made it very clear that, look, this disclaimer says that you may get cancer from this treatment because radiation is a problem, but you've already got cancer, so we're trying to treat that. And, I'm like, yeah, cool. And the second thing he said is you could have permanent nerve damage to this area. And I wish he never said that because it did lodge something in my brain. I still have recurring pain issues in that nerve center right where that tumor was. And then I started a lot of research, which I'm still ongoing, of understanding chronic pain. I suffer from it. I do a sport of which it brings it on to me, and I've got to keep going with that sport. And so I need to understand chronic pain. So then how KURK has developed over the years is research-based. We've funded this ourselves. We've got an incredible base with some amazing people. And we're all focused on how can we get a natural alternative to some of these synthetics, especially pain and especially inflammation.
Okay, so I think this is a really interesting point here. When you say natural alternative, I think a common misconception when people see who we are and what we stand for, they're like, are you saying that this can replace treatment or medication or whatever? But what I'm hearing from you is it was just, no, it's like you had this coffee table full of meds and you were figuring out your own way in which you didn't have to just take all of these things. When you say after the cancer diagnosis, we had to find a better way, is that specifically what you're talking to? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so our purpose of finding a better way is using natural compounds when they can perform as good as synthetic or pharmaceuticals. Now, during my chemo, there was a bunch of essential pharmaceuticals that I needed to take and happily took, but there was a series of optional ones, which is the sleeping, which is the anti-anxiety, which was the nausea, which was the appetite suppressants, that I found compounds that were natural that did the same effect. So we are pro-pharma. We think pharmaceutical interventions and inventions have changed the world and improved our health, but there have been some areas that they haven't done well. And pain and inflammation is the biggest one. So we have been able to look at compounds that with our research and our development and our tiny budget, we've been able to get results that we've been impressed with ourselves and that we've helped thousands of people with. But we're very clear to say we're pro-medicine and we're pro-science and we're pro-pharma. However, we've found a better way for pain and inflammation.
When you were specifically looking into this incredible compound, curcumin, from turmeric, what was it that convinced you that it's about the absorption versus the dosage? Maybe you can break that down a little for people to understand specifically what makes KURK different.
Yeah, so look, the background compound of KURK and the main hero ingredient is curcumin, but curcumin is only 2% of the root turmeric, and everyone knows turmeric. Everyone likes turmeric, and your mum's always said turmeric's great, and it turns out your mum was right. But what your mum didn't know is only 2% of turmeric is curcumin that has all these benefits. And unfortunately, the compound curcumin is a crystal. It doesn't get into the body well. So all of our research was showing that inflammation and the pain improvement were done in university hospitals where they would inject curcumin into human blood. That struck us as unusual. Harry went through a deep path. He did a PhD and a medical degree. And he's going, look, it's because this compound can't get through the cell wall. So the theory at the time and how we started our first iteration, so KURK is now on its 7th. Our first was following the science at the time, which was about make the particle or the crystal as small as possible. So, submicron if we could. How do we make it really small? How do we throw it in something and put a lot of black pepper or piperine in, which is a thing that switches off a barrier that stops curcumin and turmeric getting in. So we were going down that route for a couple of years and just trying to measure it in the blood. It was still really hard to do. And we also knew that piperine or black pepper is something you don't want to take unless you really have to, because it lets other things absorb in the cells that maybe you don't want in there. So after many years, we followed a big pharmaceutical breakthrough, and that was creating micelle technology to get curcumin into the bloodstream. A big German pharmaceutical company cracked that code. So we set about a rather daunting task of how do we recreate that chemistry. So how do we make a micelle of curcumin, but only use natural compounds? And look, I was adamant this could be done. Most of the team said, if a pharmaceutical company couldn't crack it, why can we? And I was just determined because they wouldn't be looking at natural compounds. Pharmaceuticals don't like that. They want synthetics because they can reproduce it every time and they can own a patent. It's simple, and this is not a conspiracy theory. This is just business. So after many, many months of a lot of money and a lot of scratching our head and wondering about could it be done, we cracked the code. We got a micellar that is only natural and it gets in the bloodstream, and we've tested all of that. So then we developed the chemistry, but the problem is it still tasted like petrol. And that's a problem. We've got to take this daily to make sure that it reduces the inflammation buildup and helps us. You take it one off, it'll have a little impact. But with chronic pain and with people with osteoarthritis, and I've got osteoarthritis in my fingers and in my neck from jiu-jitsu, I need to take it every day. And I take a double dose and a triple dose on the really tough days. So it's got to taste okay. So the second part of the challenge we had was how do we get this natural chemistry now and how do we make it part of your daily routine? And that's when we went into food science and we developed an incredible team of how do we make this taste nice? And we think we cracked that code as well.
Talk to me about the Science Advisory Board and why it was important for you to have that, because, we're not a standard supplement company, but most others that are creating turmeric-based products wouldn't go to as far as to do that.
Yeah, so look, most people in our industry, and we're categorized as supplements, we do see ourselves a bit differently, but they're the regulations we follow. And what that basically means is you'll have ingredients that are GRAS, generally regarded as safe, which all of ours are. And so most companies can't afford to do the research and development that we do because they've got to spend all their money on marketing. Now, most companies that do the R&D, they can't afford to do the marketing. So what the supplement industry has created, unfortunately, in my opinion, is you have two parts of the supply. So you've got the compound manufacturers, so the people that do all the R&D and find a compound that's really good, and they go and sell to a bunch of marketing people. So that's most supplement brands. They'll buy from a contract manufacturer, they'll agree a price, and usually they'll put it in a capsule and they'll put it on a bottle, and that's where they do a label design and do their marketing and say theirs is the best. But that manufacturer has sold to 20 other people the same product. And then everyone, that's just a label battle. Who's the best marketer to put this out there? So the key problem with this is obviously the research scientists and the compound manufacturers, they never meet the customer. right? Their customer is a bunch of businesses that are marketing supplements. And unfortunately, the businesses marketing supplements, they do meet the customers and they hear all the feedback, but they don't understand the product. So they can't feed back to the research scientists, oh, we've got a problem here, or only these people are getting benefit, or these people are saying this. So there's a broken chain here. So we have closed that loop. We do the research and development. We've got a science advisory board that looks at every quarter, looks at all of our data. We do extensive customer trials. We do blood test analysis on clinical trials. We make sure that we understand the product and how it's working and who it's working for. And then we feed that in each quarter. This is what the customers are saying. This is the research. What are we doing here? And then we develop another hypothesis, and maybe we'll look at a different part of the business, and then we'll try that on our customers and see what our customer feedback is. But all of this comes through us first, because I believe I'm the heaviest KURK user in the world. I love it, I need it, and I really want to take it. And so for me, sometimes there's been some times where I haven't really felt this new version 7 before it came out. We had to make some changes, and then bang, I felt it and I could understand it. All of the chemistry looked good. Then we roll it out to a bigger group of friends and loyalists, about 50 people. They like it. Then it goes to, a pilot sample of our customers. We measure that response versus the original response, and then bang, we've got ourselves a new version. And that's how we do it. So we have closed the loop. We do the research and development. We do the manufacturing. We do the retailing and the selling, and we even do the delivery.
It makes sense. You're so connected to it because it's like it's mission based. The product that you've created is directly connected to your personal experience, Harry's personal experience, and what you both went through.
Well, the key thing here is we have to do it this way for it to work. The old system doesn't really work. So we are the research scientists, and of course that puts a lot of financial constraint on our business. So I can't spend all our money on marketing like the other companies, because I've got to fund all our research and development. And the reason people don't do it is because it's so hard to do. But we've developed this system now over 6.5 years of our bioscience lab. Now we've created a brand, KURK. And now people are starting to realize why I did this. It was the hardest route, but it was essential for us to get a product that works and really helps people.
Did you ever imagine that people like Tom Hardy and Bill Moss would be interested in what you're doing in your mission?
Yeah, so we've got some prominent investors. Obviously, Tom Hardy is a big question I get all the time, a great guy that understands health really well and understands martial arts. We've got Jim Mellon, who's one of the most prolific health investors in Europe. He understands this market really well. We've got Lyndon Lee, who's a CPG brand guy that's incredibly helpful, an investor and an advisor. And then Bill Moss, an Australian philanthropist and the founder of Macquarie Bank. Bill, we met along this journey, and he was doing this as well. And after working together, he said, look, I really love your mission. You guys are the one to do it. So let's join forces. And we acquired Bill's bioscience lab. And that's what became our own one. And Bill's a significant shareholder, and his daughter Natalie and son-in-law Corey and nephew Ben. All of these people are essential in helping us build KURK and then make sure that we're creating something that is life-changing and will help many people.
So where are you at right now? We're in 2025. The business is, how old's the business now, KURK?
So our bioscience company is coming up 7 years, and the brand KURK's 3.5 years.
And you and Harry are both living cancer-free?
Yes, we're both cancer-free, and we're both still really training hard. I'm doing primarily jiu-jitsu with strength conditioning. Harry's still just cycling and strength and conditioning.
And you both did something interesting after everything you've been through. You speak about this 100 pact. Can you talk to me a bit about that?
Yeah, so during my chemo, so we wrote this business plan. We joked to Harry because, look, it was a tough time in my life. No one wants cancer. And we made a pact, and we said, all right, we're both going to live to be 100. and we're going to help each other through. So we understand life, we understand health. Harry understands health better than any others, and he's devoted his science and his medicine practice now to longevity and understanding how we can live longer but stronger, how we can extend our health span, not our lifespan. And the predominant research into this was made pretty popular by Peter Attia's book, and really understands, the book is called Outlive, and it looked at what are the 4 chronic issues that basically reduce people's health span and what actually has a long death, which means a slow death, and they're the bad ones. So obviously cancer, heart disease, metabolic dysfunction, which is sort of basically obesity, or Alzheimer's and all the related sort of brain issues. So Harry's whole practice now is how can we reduce all 4 of these to prolong our life, but also our health. We don't want to spend an extra 10 years and you're in a wheelchair being, a real burden to your family. We want a fast death. We want to be active and dancing on a table in Ibiza on my 100th birthday. And then that is then going to secure our 100 pact. So what this has done is galvanized our friendship, and he is looking at the medicine and looking at all of the breakthroughs with AI and all of the interesting things in medicine and health. And what I'm doing is looking how can we have the plant compounds needed to prolong this. And that's set about our research in osteoarthritis and really understanding age-related inflammation, which people are calling inflammaging now, and understanding how inflammation gets worse as we get old and the link of inflammation and pain. And they're fascinating subjects, and we're extensively deep in that research, and that's going to go for the rest of my life. So I'm 48 now. I've got 52 years until the 100 pact, and Harry's a little bit older than me, so he's going to get there first. But the 100 pact means we're both going to get there together, and then we're going to bring a lot of friends and a lot of our community along with us as well.
So a lot of the content and things that you guys are talking about is directly connected to this like longevity aspect, right?
Yeah, so for us, we understand what aging is now. Everyone understands the problems with aging. And everyone, traditionally, previous generations have just accepted that's what happens when we age. But our generation is disrupting that, and we are the major disruptors. Harry, with his practice, myperformancedoctor.com, is, again, a private medical practice looking at interventions to improve aging. And what we're doing with KURK is making sure that we've got the natural compounds to help us age better. And what it basically means is we need to be strength training. We need to make sure we don't get obese. So we've got to understand diet and health activity. We monitor ourselves. I've got the Oura Ring and the Apple Watch that feeds up into my file that Harry monitors daily and gets little alerts when I haven't charged my Oura Ring, and there'll be a text message, what's going on. And so then we can look at our sleep, we can look at resting heart rate, we can look at all of the heart rate variability. Then we look at my body weight. Then we look at all these metrics, blood tests every 6 months, full body MRIs every year, just trying to locate anything before it becomes a symptom, and then we can address it that way. So it's called proactive medicine, precision medicine. The general public know it as longevity. The doctors don't like that term, but it's basically 100 pack means we've got to hit 100 and we've got to do it well.
Amazing. So just to end on then, so for those that don't have a best friend as a doctor and they don't have all of the tech and the information and it's not really their life, however, they are interested in living longer and they want to start to turn their lives around. Maybe they're in pain, maybe they're dealing with arthritis, whatever it is. Why is KURK a good starting point? What is it about KURK that even just implementing it into your daily ritual, how would that impact someone's life?
Yeah, so look, what the first thing we've focused on with KURK is understanding why we take it. We take it because it reduces the inflammation. Now, what that means is it works a different pathway to ibuprofen that sort of masks the inflammation and masks the pain. So reducing the inflammation, the most important thing for us is make sure the product is safe. So we constantly do blood tests, looking at the organ functions, looking at how this helps people. Basically, we do know that curcumin's been used for 4,000 years, and all the compounds we have in our products are regarded as safe. So for most people that have a pain and inflammation problem, they can try and see if KURK works for them. So we give a 60-day money-back guarantee. If people don't like our product or it doesn't work, we don't want you to pay for it. We'll give you your money back. That's something that's been an adamant part of our business from day one. We understand the different biochemistries. We understand epigenetics, which is the fancy way of saying when you take something, there's a series of switches in your body, on, off. Now, we know what alcohol does with epigenetics, but we can have one friend and we basically have 3 drinks and it affects us differently. It's the same with all these compounds. So for us, what we urge people is to try it if you've got a problem. If you've got pain or inflammation, or you want to sort of, get active and well and maybe start lifting weights, but you're worried about being sore. And that's where our sports product has come in, where we're looking at younger people that have pain and inflammation from training. And we look at how can we reduce that down and then get the motivation to train up more so you can get more skills acquisition or more gains in that way. So look, we've got tens of thousands of customers all around the world, and for the vast majority of people, KURK is working really well. But we know it can't work for everyone. Some people mightn't have the problem that we fix, which is sort of pain and inflammation, or some people don't feel it or they don't like the taste, and we just happily give them the money back. But most people are really happy, and the repeat purchases confirm that. All of our customer surveys, all of the studies we do, the thousands of messages we get back. And again, we're regulated as a supplement, so we can't share a lot of this. And we're pro-regulation, so there's only so many things that we can actually show and tell our customers. But it's very important for us that this is helping people, and the vast majority of people are really impressed. And so what we do on our website is publish everything that we possibly can about our research and development and who we're helping. We'll have all our latest studies that we've done. The one we did recently showed an incredible improvement in pain and inflammation for people with joint pain. We also show our safety studies, so all the organs that we just make sure everything's safe, because we know a lot of people use ibuprofen for the problem that we're fixing as well, and we know ibuprofen's really bad for the organs. So we're just making sure we're a safer alternative. And on our website, we've listed everything we can possibly do and to make sure people have the right information to make a good decision and allow them to try KURK. So for 6.5 years with this bioscience lab and 3.5 years in this, we've developed a real understanding of how we help people and also how we can't help people. So people can visit our KURK website and look at all of the news, look at our science advisory team, contact our customer team, and just ask any questions. We've probably heard your question before, and if we can't answer it because of regulation, we will tell you that. We're here to help people.
So recent product launch, KURK Sport. Can you talk to that a little bit? What it is, why you created a sports product specifically?
Yeah, so look, the compound in KURK Sport is our micelle curcumin. It's taken us a couple of years to develop the liquid version into a powder that is still stable and has the same biochemistry results. And we cracked that code, and it was incredible. The obvious use case then was sports, because I train martial arts, jiu-jitsu, and strength conditioning. Harry's a cyclist. We understand a lot of sports people are abusing ibuprofen. I was doing it. We see it relatively commonly in my gyms, and more importantly, there's now a lot of research and a lot of news stories about professional athletes having problems with ibuprofen or Advil and non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, and they are passing it around in the change rooms like Tic Tacs. This is wrong. This is bad. And we've had professional sports teams reach out. All their heads of nutrition want to know our research, of which they're discussing. So at KURK, we've developed a sports product that solves the three main issues that sports people have. Number one is hydration. We understand that when we sweat, it's not just water, it's pretty much electrolytes that come out. That's why your sweat tastes salty. And so we need to put that back in. The body needs electrolytes to function correctly. So we've incorporated electrolytes with our micellar curcumin, with our compound that reduces pain and inflammation, even DOMS, so delayed onset of muscle soreness. DOMS is a known thing in the training industries because it's sore. If you train a muscle really hard, it gets sore. We understand why. Micellar curcumin really helps with that. And then we've combined it with echinacea. Now, again, this is a product that your mum has told you really works and everyone across the world universally accepts. But how it works is interesting. So echinacea is a lot of the times known for something for colds and flus. All our research, and one of our science advisory doctors has done extensive research on echinacea. We need to take it daily, and it needs to be drank or gargled in the throat because it's a barrier for colds and flus, so to stop them getting into the body and into the bloodstream. Once you've got the cold and flu, it doesn't really help that much. So for us, in terms of athletes and pro sports people, getting a cold or flu is the worst thing for them. It disrupts their training, it ruins their sleep, it definitely reduces their output. So trying to have this in a daily drink that replenishes the electrolytes, acts with the micellar curcumin, and then has the barrier for colds and flu of echinacea. And we think we've cracked this with the best tasting product we can. This has just been soft launched. We've had professional teams reach out and we haven't even done any marketing yet. So we're very happy with KURK Sport, and we're sure this is going to be a big hit to help a lot of people.
And is it just for active people, athletes, or can anybody take the sport product?
So anyone can take the sport product. The thing is, we've got echinacea, which is great for everyone. We've got micellar curcumin, which is great for everyone. The only thing is electrolytes. We've got the electrolytes of sodium, potassium, there's some salts. So some people, if they don't want extra salt in their body, or they're not doing any physical activity that's really sort of requiring a lot of sweating, maybe that's something that normal KURK will provide. But we created KURK Sport because we had a lot of professional athletes using normal KURK. So they were using the KURK Vanilla or the KURK Orange or the KURK Cola before or after their workouts, and they would be telling us about the benefits. So we then realized, look, a sports product for my own use, and Harry, being a cyclist, he loves electrolytes, he wants the micellar curcumin, and he wants the echinacea. So we developed this for ourselves. We've sent this to a lot of professional athletes, and the results are outstanding. Sport was something I developed for my own training, but also people in my gym. I own a gym in London, Elevate Martial Arts, above the train station if you want to come in and say hello. And so I see pro athletes there. We've got UFC fighters, we've got Bellator fighters, we've got national champions in powerlifting. We've got all this type of people. And what we see is what they need. They need to recover smarter. They need to not take ibuprofen and all of the bad NSAIDs. They need to keep their lives healthy and natural, and they need a product that's going to replenish their electrolytes, help them recover from muscle and joint soreness, which is the micellar curcumin, and help them avoid cold and flus, and that's the echinacea, the triple action. And we're getting incredible results from this.